former gifted children. What went wrong? High expectations from a young age. From everyone, leading to overworking, depression, anxiety and burnout. Sounds like a cop-out. But to an extent I blame my mother. I'd come home having scored a 98 over 99 and her brand of comedy was to ask what happened to the other 1 or 2%. She loves me and didn't mean any harm by it. But after a while it wears on you. I started feeling like if I didn't try it wouldn't matter to me if I missed out on a few percentage points here or there anymore, because I'd always have a legitimate excuse for myself. That, plus mental health issues, anxiety, and depression. I'm actually doing much better now and teach at university level, but there's always that voice in the back of my head that tells me things are never quite good enough. And it bugs the shit out of me. Eater, hey look, ma. I finally reached 100. I never learned how to work for my grades. Even now in college, I find it hard to sit down and do my work, and I push everything to the last minute. It turned even worse when my university turned all exams and school to longer exams at home with permitted use of books. I didn't open the book until the exam. Got an average grade, but could have done much better had I just read and worked as I should. That said, the course expecting us to read 500 pages a week on average is just not realistic. Mental illness and being poorly prepared for life. But I've gotten control of it. Now I'm a little behind in life, but I'm back in college and have a 4.0. Sometimes we get derailed, but it's never too late to try again. The same things that go wrong for most gifted kids. Gifted education doesn't deliver. I was head of every class I was in for the longest time. But giving the smart kid more of the same work doesn't teach them about being challenged. Then when the Board of Education got involved, because I broke the standardized test in 3rd grade and the school was forced to skip me ahead. The principal rode me like a fairground pony and would call me to his office once a week and berate me for not instantly coming out on top of a class that was starting to challenge me 2 weeks into first term. I still ended up in the school for smart kids. But the curriculum was no different to every other school. It was just a holding tank. The education system is designed for kids to learn at a specific pace. If you do it faster, if you do it slower, if you do it differently, the system stops working pretty quickly. Edit. Well, this blew up in a way I wasn't expecting. Hey. For those of you who want to read more about what happens to gifted kids as they grow up, I recommend Gifted Grown-Ups, https://www.amazon.com AU/gifted grown-ups blessings extraordinary potential lebec/dp/b000v64pa/ref equals mp s a 1 1 DCHILD equals 1 and KEYWORDS equals GIFTED plus GROWNUPS and QID equals 1,609,991,321 and SR equals 8-1 by Meryl Kelly Stresnowski. Hella expensive for an ebook, but well worth it. This was the book that finally put all the intelligence into perspective for me. And made me realize that I was not only smarter, I was also qualitatively different. And because of that, no matter where I'm in life, giftedness is a lifelong thing. Developed severe depression and didn't get help until after I had already failed pretty much all my classes for 3 years in a row and fallen behind. And then fell another year behind when I was in a long-term progress-based outpatient program getting treatment for my depression. Then, when I finally went back to school with my mental health in check, I had about a month of good grades and success before I started to develop major health problems. I tried to finish via online schooling, but couldn't keep up with the increased workload in online school while so sick, so I ended up having to drop out. And that's how I went from a gifted and talented kid to a high school dropout. ADHD and child abuse. Never learned how to learn. In school I was in the top 5 in every class without ever having to revise or even pay much attention. Exams were mostly multiple choice with most of the answers being obviously wrong, so even a guess was usually right. college was all topics I was interested in and had done for fun outside of school since I was a child, so I got top marks in every module without even opening a book. Uni was different. There were new concepts and heavy workloads, and worse yet, group work where my group never even went into class. I cold worked harder. Asked for help with stuff I didn't get right away. Asked to be placed in different groups, so I wasn't doing the entire project by myself, but I'd never learned how. I'd never had to ask a teacher how something worked. I just saw an example and worked out the steps for myself, and with everyone who knew me so confident that I was doing well, I couldn't face the fact that I needed help for the first time. I just kept hitting my head against a brick wall rather than asking if someone could open a door for me. Needless to say, I failed and didn't have the money to try again. Worse yet, I only got into university with a grant, and since I didn't make it to the end of the semester, they took the money back. I didn't have an income, and now not only was I saddled with the debt of 3 years of student loans, but I also had nothing to show for it, and 4 months worth of grant money that I'd already spent on living expenses taken back. All at the height of the recession with unemployment at an all-time high. What really stung though was my parents' reactions. Not disappointed or even consoling. They blamed the university for not teaching me well enough, and every time the topic came up they would get riled up about how the university had done a bad job and how I needed to lodge a complaint so I can go back and continue the degree because of how much money it had cost them. They didn't pay for my tuition fees. The grant money was based off their income, and my mum didn't work to ensure that we didn't go over the limit and reduce the amount of money I could apply for so that they wouldn't have to cover any of my expenses. I was unemployed for nearly 2 years after that, despite applying for every job going. I have a decent, well-paying job now, but I can still remember how much it hurt not even being rejected, but not receiving so much as an email to acknowledge the rejection. Like you're applying for their position was just wasting their time. Funny thing is that my little sister wasn't gifted at school. She was perfectly average and had to work hard for everything she got. She earned her degree first try, got a job straight away, and I couldn't be prouder. I faced the first real obstacle in my life and crumpled because I didn't know how to deal with it. She never had that easy ride and faced obstacles her whole life, so she knew how to cope with the stress and the workload, how to learn and study, and how to get help when she needed it. And now I sit a decade later, a self-loathing slob who never picked up all the pieces that fell when I shattered. At least some of the blame for that has to go to the education system that, rather than pushing students to reach their potential, gave out stickers that told you were special and then left you in the corner to coast while they focused on the one kid at the back who threw things when he didn't get enough attention. From a really early age I was considered a bright kid. Now when interacting with people in my daily life, it's generally understood that I come off as pretty smart. But I never had accomplishments that were consistent with that. I never had something to show for it. But that doesn't necessarily suggest that my strengths weren't real. It just suggests that they didn't end up being as important as some might have guessed. What went wrong is that the world turned out to be a place where there are very few chances for people to make a living running their mouth. Trauma. Became lazy. Started to fail school. Too much procrastination. LSD and big tits. I was considered gifted in the sense that I always got great test scores. At times perfect. But that was when I was in an actual public school. I was moved to online schooling a year after Sandy Hook and my grades dropped significantly. I just couldn't learn as well as I used to. This might have been the cause of my depression, or I just happened to be depressed on top of all the other bullcrap. A whole childhood of first or last rhetoric burned me out by college. And no matter how well I did, even when coming first for something, I was told I could have done better. This has been ingrained into me, and as an adult I don't really feel much accomplishment for my achievements, as there is a voice in my head that says I did not perform to my absolute maximum ability. Get a college degree. Cool, I got one. Now what? No one ever talked to me about planning for goals after college, and 7 years later I still don't know what I'm doing with my life. I started school a year early because I was considered gifted. I remember having to take a special test so I could start school early and being afraid I would fail and disappoint my mom. By first grade, I was in gifted classes. Teachers would remove us from our normal class, or we'd miss out on recess and go to these extra classes. The other kids picked on us. I wasn't as emotionally mature in the first place, and I was physically tiny. The pressure to be expectational in the gifted class was extreme. In second grade, I had an emotional breakdown in gifted class that required my mom to come pick me up at school since I couldn't stop crying and hyperventilating. I was removed from the gifted class after that. I felt so embarrassed. First I was the weird kid none of the others liked, and then I was the weird kid who melted down and wasn't good enough to stay in the gifted class. TLDR, it sucked. Emotional trauma. An additive personality and a healthy dose of depression. Depression. Anxiety which lead to drugs, alcohol and failure. Getting bullied. Well, my family are poor as shit. I'm talking I didn't realize vegetables came in anything but cans until I moved out. And we never had enough to eat. I was also raised in a cult where education was seen as a bad thing. So I got a late start, even though I skipped a couple grades. By my teenage years I was dealing with severely untreated mental illness and was forced onto benzos to deal with anxiety attacks. I started self-medicating, and by 15 was completely addicted, snorting them as often as taking them. I was cloistered away and not allowed any friends, not specifically in my cult, which made things worse. I worked 3 jobs at 16, and my parents confiscated all the money. I also started at a local tech school around this time. Between the side effects of the benzos, guilt over religion, and just general stress, I attempted suicide, lost a scholarship I had applied for, and my main job. Barely made it through the rest of school. Moved out after that, and have gotten better every year since. But it's a long fucking road.